on Arctic security, and this is why the threat of additional tariffs for security reasons is simply wrong. We now live in a world defined by raw power, whether economic or military, technological or geopolitical. And while many of us may not like it, we must deal with the world as it is now. We are at a crossroads. Europe prefers dialogue and solutions, but we are fully prepared to act, if necessary, with unity, urgency and determination. Greenland is not just a territory in a key region of the world map and a land rich in critical raw materials, a strategic outpost on emerging global sea routes. It's all of these things. But above all, Greenland is home to a free and sovereign people. It is a nation with its sovereignty and its right to territorial integrity, and the future of Greenland is only for the Greenlanders to decide. We need our own strategic approach. This is why we're working on a package to support Arctic security. The first pillar will be a massive European investment surge in Greenland, in particular to further support the local economy and infrastructure.
The most powerful woman in Brussels just got humiliated on the world stage, and she never saw it coming. For years, Ursula von der Leyen acted like a queen, above questions, above responsibility, above challenge. She built the European Commission into her personal empire, wrapped her legacy in green promises, and told 450 million Europeans that she alone knew the way forward. Nobody was supposed to shout.
For is living with us to food to water.
What came out was not a critique. It was not a protest. It was a precise destruction of everything von der Leyen spent 5 years building.
Thank you.
That's it. One woman standing at the podium in Rome, looking directly into the camera and saying the words that Brussels had spent years making sure no major leader would ever dare to say in public. The shockwave hit Brussels before the press conference was even finished. Phones were ringing in the Berlaymont building, emergency meetings were being called, and Ursula von der Leyen, the woman who lectures entire countries about discipline and order, was rushing like she had never rushed before. What Meloni said cannot be taken back, and what it started may be impossible to stop. To understand why Meloni's words landed like a bomb in Brussels, you have to understand the system of power that von der Leyen spent years quietly building. This was not a woman who accidentally reached the most powerful unelected position in the Western world. This was planned, careful climbing. Von der Leyen arrived at the European Commission presidency in 2019 through a private deal so unclear that even members of the European Parliament were openly angry. She was not the candidate people voted for. She was the candidate that Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron agreed on in a closed room after midnight when the first nominee failed under political pressure. The European Parliament approved her by just 9 votes, 9 out of 751 members. That is not strong support, that is weak support. But von der Leyen understood something very important about power that her critics did not see. In Brussels, legitimacy does not come from votes. It comes from controlling decisions. And from the moment she took her seat in the Berlaymont, she moved carefully, like someone who knew how weak her position was and how to make it untouchable. She launched the European Green Deal within weeks of taking office, a huge project that affected every part of every economy in every member country. And climate policy became the main focus of her commission. And more importantly, it became the moral shield that made challenging her feel like challenging the future. Anyone who questioned the Green Deal was not just a political opponent, they were called an enemy of the planet. It was smart and it worked for years. The problem with building power on moral authority is that moral authority is very fragile in politics. The moment reality proves you wrong, the whole structure becomes weak. And by early 2026, reality had been proving von der Leyen wrong for so long, so loudly and so clearly that even her closest allies in the European Parliament were talking quietly about damage control. European energy bills had not gone down, they had increased sharply. The average household in Germany was spending almost 40% more on energy in 2025 than it did in 2020. In Spain, energy poverty was no longer rare but a major political crisis. In Italy, small and medium businesses, the foundation of the Italian economy, were closing at levels not seen since the 2008 financial crisis, destroyed by high energy costs, strict rules, and limited credit controlled by Brussels rules. These were not just numbers and reports, these were families choosing between heating and eating. These were factory owners who built their businesses over many years, watching everything disappear in months. And through all of this, von der Leyen continued to appear at climate meetings, at international summits, at planned press events talking about change and ambition and the green future of Europe. While the continent she claimed to lead was quietly suffering, Meloni saw all of this. She had been watching, thinking, and waiting for the exact right moment. Because Meloni understands something about European politics that many people miss. Timing is as important as the challenge itself. You do not strike when your opponent is weak, you strike when your opponent is weak and does not know it yet. And in January 2026, von der Leyen was standing on the weakest point of her leadership, still showing confidence to the cameras while problems were growing under her feet. The trigger was the return of the EU Stability and Growth Pact. After years of pause during the pandemic, Brussels brought back its financial rules strongly, demanding that countries with high debt make spending cuts to meet EU targets. For Italy, this was not just discussion. Italy's debt had reached 138.3% of GDP, and the Commission's demands meant cuts to healthcare, pension changes, less public spending, and higher taxes on an economy already struggling. Meloni had fought these demands through meetings and diplomacy. She had sent letters, attended summits, and joined the normal Brussels discussions. And every time she received the same answer. The rules are the rules. The Stability Pact is not negotiable. Italy must obey. What Brussels did not understand was that every time they gave that answer, they were giving Meloni the material she needed to build her case for the whole world. Because when Meloni stood before the cameras in Rome on that January morning in 2026, she did not just criticize policy, she did not just argue about numbers. She looked directly into the camera and told the world that the European Commission under Ursula von der Leyen had lost the moral and democratic right to control the economic future of sovereign nations. She said it clearly. She said it without softening her words. She said it in language that a factory worker in Turin and a farmer in Sicily could understand without special education. And she said it knowing that once those words were spoken by a sitting prime minister of a founding EU country, they could never be taken back or hidden. The reaction in Brussels was exactly what Meloni expected. Within hours, Commission officials released statements asking for calm and discussion. Officials were calling Rome urgently. Allies of von der Leyen demanded Meloni explain her words. Yeah, but there was no explanation coming because Meloni had not made a mistake. She had been careful. Every word was chosen, every sentence was planned for maximum impact. This was not an accident, this was a strategy. And Brussels was only starting to understand it. The Green Deal was meant to be von der Leyen's greatest achievement, the success that would put her name in history beside Europe's founders. 5 years of political effort, 5 years of strict rules, 5 years of telling European industries, workers, and families that short-term pain would bring long-term success. Meloni did not just criticize the Green Deal, she examined it publicly step by step, showing Europe what was really built compared to what was promised. The numbers Meloni showed were not from political opponents, they came from official EU reports and from the European Court of Auditors and from industry reports Brussels had received and ignored. European car makers had lost 18% of their global market share in 3 years. The charging stations needed before the 2035 ban were delayed by 7 years, and the average electric car was still too expensive for about 60% of European families. Meloni stood before Parliament and asked a simple but powerful question. If the Green Deal is working, why are European families poorer, European industries weaker, and China richer than before? There was no answer from Brussels because there was no good answer. Von der Leyen had risked Europe's industry on a plan that expected technology, infrastructure, and buyers to be ready at the same time. They were not. And instead of admitting the mistake, the Commission made stricter rules for acting like a captain who speeds up after hitting rocks. What made Meloni's attack impossible to stop was that she was not speaking only for Italy. Behind closed doors, leaders from France, Germany, and Spain had been saying the same things privately, but they were afraid to say it publicly. Meloni was not afraid. She had already been called nationalist, populist, and extremist. Each attack only made her stronger with voters. Von der Leyen tried to regain control. She called an emergency meeting and announced a review of Green Deal timelines. It was presented as adjustment. But everyone knew what it was. A retreat, forced and humiliating under pressure from the woman in Rome. Meloni had forced the most powerful unelected official in Europe to step back. And in politics, when your opponent steps back first, you move forward. This is the moment history is happening live. What started as one press conference in Rome has become the biggest political conflict the European Union has faced. Meloni did not just challenge policy, she challenged the entire Brussels system. The belief that unelected officials can control sovereign nations forever. That belief is now breaking. Von der Leyen built her power on the idea that no leader would dare confront her. She was wrong, and the cost is now being paid by the European project itself. The system is shaking, alliances are breaking, and leaders are watching Meloni's popularity grow. The next moves will decide if the EU reforms or faces something more serious, whether von der Leyen recovers or loses everything, whether Meloni's model spreads or causes stronger resistance. No, Europe is at a crossroads not seen since the rebuilding after the Second World War. The decisions made now will affect generations, and you are watching it live. If this explanation helped you understand what is really happening in Europe, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the European Union can survive this conflict? Or has Meloni already started something nobody can stop?